The Dallas Cowboys will take on the Cleveland Browns in week 1 of the 2024 season. We'll break it all down on this crossover edition of the Locked On Browns and Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends. I am Jeff Lloyd, the host of Locked On Browns. He is Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. Look, we have all been waiting. January, certainly for the Cowboys. January, certainly for the Cleveland Browns. And here we are. We're back. Long anticipated 2024 season for both franchises. We are going to get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game. We are going to talk about some offensive line play. Huge here for both teams this Sunday. We are going to talk about Deshaun Watson, and let's judge on what we see and not what we think. But we are going to start it off. Dak Prescott, newly inked up CeeDee Lamb. Marcus, what's the latest with the Dallas Cowboys?
A lot. We've got a lot going on and then not a lot at the same time, right? CeeDee Lamb got his deal, missed the entire training camp. Now we're just waiting on news of Dak Prescott potentially getting a deal before the season starts. Micah Parsons wanting a new deal, but the Cowboys deciding not to do one. It's a busy time for the Dallas Cowboys, as it is for every other team, but it seems like the Cowboys are always in the news for the wrong reasons.
Now, when you get into this team, look, the playmaking ability of CeeDee Lamb, and you look at the rest of that wide receiver room. The decision certainly made a couple of years ago. Amari Cooper, eventually that type of money was going to go to CeeDee Lamb, times about 10, times about 15, the way the wide receiver contracts have gotten. But CeeDee, you have certainly the quarterback in place. You certainly have the upper echelon playmaker in place. You have, and I actually talked on my show yesterday, that you have that Myles Garrett presence. 40 and a half sacks through the first 3 NFL seasons speaks volumes about where the future is. Can you keep those 3 together? Because it kind of all runs through those 3.
Yeah, and let me add in a couple other guys. Deron Bland is going to become a free agent in a couple of years. Set the record for most interceptions returned for a touchdown last year. The Cowboys are also paying Trayvon Diggs $20 million a year, one of the top corners in the league. They're paying Zach Martin, their right guard, the highest guard salary in the league. And then, oh, by the way, Tyler Smith, their left guard, might be even better. So they've got a bunch of these contracts coming up. You can pay them. Like, let's just be clear. You can pay them. But you're going to have to draft really well. You're going to have to be very smart around the edges. And that's what's going to be difficult. I think that the roster that the Cowboys had last year and this year won't be the roster they have in upcoming years unless they continue to crush the draft. But just to answer your question, Jeff, yes, I still think that they are going to find a way to keep Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, who's already under contract, and Micah Parsons together for the foreseeable future.
Now, for anybody who says, how is this possible? Well, this is also a Locked On Browns podcast.
Yes.
So if anybody knows how all this stuff can work financially, you Cleveland Browns listeners, and I kind of think the Haslams have some money. We know Jerry's not hurting in the money department. There is one thing that is going to be kind of interesting about this game, though, Marcus, is I don't know if anybody's really going to be able to run the ball. The Browns, we're going to get to this as the episode goes on, with the offensive line. There's so many changes. Nobody has really played together yet. The Dallas Cowboys running back room, you look at it and it's like, well, there's a couple names there that were really, really good a few years ago. The Browns is Jerome Ford, but you don't know what the offensive line can bring. Dante Foreman. So this, for me, is one thing that I know a lot of people, when they talk about this game, it's about 27 on their list of things to talk about, but it could make a difference for either one of these teams.
Yeah, I would love to talk about the Cowboys offensive line because they're going to be starting 2 new starters at left tackle and center. Tyler Guyton, who they drafted in round 1, who they're moving over from right tackle to left tackle. He had a very good training camp. He'd missed some time with an illness, but the Cowboys are very excited about him. Just remember, we'll hold a pin to that. We're going to get back to him in a second. Cooper Beebe is their starting center. And actually, the Cowboys really didn't have any plans to start Cooper Beebe at center. They had this veteran, Brock Hoffman, And the plan was to have Brock Hoffman be their starting center and ease Cooper Beebe in. Cooper Beebe just beat him out in camp. And it was so decisive that the Cowboys had no choice but to start Cooper Beebe in week 1. I don't think the Cowboys wanted to start 2 rookies, but here we are against arguably the best pass rush in the NFL, arguably the best defensive line in the NFL. I'm optimistic because you have those 2 guards, right? Zach Martin, Tyler Smith. That might be the best guard combination in the NFL. The only other one that rivals that might be on the other side of the ball in Cleveland, right? But when you have Tyler Guyton going up against not only Myles Garrett, which, I mean, Myles Garrett's going to have a fantastic day, but also Zadarius Smith and all the other pass rushers they have, it could be a rough first game for Tyler Guyton. And I think the Cowboys know that. I think that's why they're going to give him a lot of help. But I do have some major concerns, Jeff, about their ability to run the ball. I just don't see that happening much in this game.
Well, I believe the phrase we would be looking for that would be baptismal by fire. And hey, if you're going to be a Bear, be a Grizzly. Browns fans, right tackle to left tackle. We all know how that can work out sometimes as well. But that is where it's going to be interesting because again, there's everybody when you cover this stuff, it's main storylines, it's top players, it's the names that everybody know of. But week in, week out in the NFL, you get to so many games that are decided by things that, and maybe it's just because this is what we do, things that nobody paid much attention to, or it's essentially the 39th guy technically if you're putting the roster chronologically 1 through 53. So that what makes for the most interesting part of this. The Browns are in the same type of boat here. The Cowboys, of course, have a good defensive line. The Browns didn't have the opportunity to play guys in the preseason, and a lot of it was if I can't put them all out there, there's no sense to put out so and so who's a 9-year veteran just to say I got him a few snaps in the summer. It's pointless. Don't play him with guys that he is never going to play with. And now we're getting into this scenario for the Browns, and this is certainly what a leadoff segment too. But Marcus, anything here? A few seconds here, obviously, before we start to transition. Anything Cowboys-wise that maybe anybody doesn't know that should know before week 1?
Well, I mean, the Cowboys had a fantastic defense last year. They've been number 1 in turnovers over the last 3 years, but they have a scheme change. They're going from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer, and that is going to look totally different. Mike Zimmer does not stunt as much as Dan Quinn does. He doesn't blitz as much. However, he gives you a lot of very interesting looks. And if you look at the history of defensive coordinators or defensive-minded coaches and their success against, let's call them like Shanahan disciples in that style of offense, Zimmer is like top of that by far. I want to see what it looks like against a Kevin Stefanski offense and maybe even a little bit of a Ken Dorsey offense, right? Like, are they blitzing Deshaun Watson? Are they dropping 7 into coverage and just rushing 4? This is going to be our first chance to see what Mike Zimmer's defense looks like because we haven't seen him use Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons didn't play at all in the preseason. Same with DeMarcus Lawrence, same for Trayvon Diggs. So this is going to be our first opportunity to see a Zim defense in action.
And Coach Stefanski spoke eloquently today, and obviously the relationship, Coach Stefanski, Mike Zimmer, there is a relationship there. And Coach Stefanski, it was funny the way he phrased some of the things because it was kind of like, he spoke about him like he was somebody that he knew of, maybe didn't know. Yeah. But it's all the gamesmanship of the NFL. We're going to continue on here. Crossover Thursday, brought to you by PrizePicks. Locked On Cowboys host Marcus Mosher. You're Locked On Browns host Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate you all for sticking around. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick a more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. This is where it gets fun. 1 Caleb Williams passing yards gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. You can look at some of the top players in the league. CeeDee Lamb is always certainly an intriguing option. Amari Cooper last year, Browns fans, that worked and worked well for us. Last season, we all cashed in, and we cashed in big. You need to make sure that you put together a lineup. Like, again, it is 2 to 6 players. You are going more than, and you are going less than. PrizePicks.com, Locked On NFL, all lowercase. PrizePicks, run your game. Your latest Locked On Browns continues, and it is crossover Thursday, which means it is Locked On Cowboys, it is Locked On Browns. Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. I guess I'll start here because we are going to talk, obviously, some Cleveland Browns. And Marcus, I don't know if you know, but one of the relatively hot topics in the NFL right now is current Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson. And it's certainly been a 2-year. And look, at this point, after 2 years, if he had played almost every single game, we would know the story one way or the other. Everybody, it would be solved one way or the other. But because the first year, and it was the first 11 games, the last 6, and then, and now people still trying to bring up rust. There is no more rust now. There was rust 2 years ago when he first played. Now then last year, and it, started well, and it started well record-wise, 5-1. Deshaun Watson is 8-4 as a starting quarterback at the Cleveland Browns. But to say QB wins, and that had to be one of the things you're putting as a plus when you were talking about a quarterback who is in the higher echelon of pay, it's not necessarily good. But then there are people like me. You look at the way the Cleveland Browns went last year at 11-6, and the whole Joe Flacco thing. And look, it was fun. It was a great story. There's not a Browns fan alive that is not going to remember the way 2023 ended. But at the end of the day, did I think Deshaun Watson probably would have had that team to a similar record? Yes, I do. They kind of ate off an easy schedule was the thing. It was tread water, and you should do well at the end of the season. It was Joe Flacco playing. And look, as much fun as it was, you break down the statistics. If they were good teams, those interceptions probably would have cost you some of those games. It certainly did come back to bite you in the rear end, certainly in the playoff game against the Texans. And then now you get to, some other things here. So you have Deshaun back. But certainly rehabbed. And it was a long process to get back. And everybody, well, he's not practicing enough. He's not doing this enough. When everybody told you the whole point of the rehab was to have him prepared for September 8th against the Dallas Cowboys. It wasn't for May. It wasn't for early June. It wasn't for late July. It certainly wasn't for August. It was for September 8th. So far, he's right where he's supposed to be. But you have an offensive line that is returning your 3 top offensive tackles, every one of them from knee surgery. DeJuan Jones was the first one back. Looks like he will be the right tackle. And it looks like whatever way this shakes out over the first couple of weeks, DeJuan Jones is the one thing they're not going to change. They do not want to disrupt the growth path that DeJuan Jones is on.
As he should be. I mean, he was awesome last year in pass pro. He was fantastic.
And the other thing is, it's a chance to reset some financials for this team. Yes. You have him under that control. Jack Conklin, a lot of people, and again, for anybody who does not know, Jack Conklin started 35 games at left tackle at Michigan State. So we're not taking a guy who has never played the position. Granted, it has been a long time. But we're not taking a guy who's never played the position and put him there. The other thing is it's probably easier for him physically coming off the serious knee injury. Jed will not tell you exactly what happened with his knee. And again, he was put on the spot today. But they thought they were going to rehab their way through it. He thought there was a chance to come back. He hit a certain point where there wasn't getting any better. So late in the season, that was it. His year was over. And then he went under the knife. And again, asked again today what the injury was. He basically told what was known. And he said, yes, there was some other stuff. So anybody that's getting on, and look, I am as guilty as anybody. Jed Will's play has drawn a lot of negative talk from me. But you want to know what? The guy was out there almost every week. And so, when you look at it over a 5-year contract, the Browns have some culpability here. They drafted a right tackle, hoping he would be a left tackle. Cowboys fans, you'll see how it works. It's not always the easiest thing in the world. So you have some culpability here with that. Now, the other thing is, some additions. The Browns didn't do a lot. They kind of reran most of this roster here. But there was one, and it's been one I have been harping on, and my Browns listeners knows for years. I was chasing Jerry Jeudy just as long as the Browns were. I think we both had our eyes. Yes, everybody did. When you say first-round pick, and it wasn't like he flamed out. Was he underachieving? Yes. But it wasn't like all of a sudden he wasn't playing. He wasn't getting any balls thrown to him. You go to 22, and it was, I think, 63 for 972 and 6. And you keep in mind what was playing quarterback and the performance of said quarterback in the year. You understand that appeal. And not only were the Browns intrigued, as soon as they got him, they basically, within 9 days, gave him the ring and gave him the contract extension right off the bat. So I think that is going to be a big thing. And look, it seems weird, and it's not always good when you say, "Oh, well, we're upping up the skill," because everybody, "Oh, well, you're trying to do it to make Deshaun good." No, well, I mean, A, you're doubling down because Deshaun essentially, and again, for a lot of people, Deshaun's almost free money because when your owner says, "I'm paying the bill," there is a way to make it look like the owner is paying the bill, which is kind of the way it works. And if you notice, it does not prohibit the Browns from doing any other moves. But get all these guys involved, get Amari involved, get Jerry Jeudy involved, because there is a thought process within the Browns, and this is why they did not want to give Amari Cooper any more money after this year. Why they gave him a little bit more for this year was it's that age 30. So if there is a starting of decline, we don't want to be on the hook for any more after this year. If it turns out there's no decline, we'll talk about 25 when 24 is over. But they have high visions for Jerry Jeudy and what he's able to bring this team and what he should be able to do for this team.
So I want to go back to Deshaun Watson just really quickly, because as an outsider who lives in the tri-state area, I've seen plenty of Browns games, right? I can't get the vision out of the game out of my head last year, the second half against Baltimore, that they won that game. I thought he didn't quite look like the same Watson that we saw in Houston, but that version of Deshaun Watson was good enough to get to the Browns wherever they wanted to go, right? And that's why I felt so encouraged coming out of that game. And then we find out, was it 2 days later, that he has to have season-ending shoulder surgery, right? So it's one of these things, like the last game that I saw him play was the best game that he's probably played as a Cleveland Brown, but now he's going through another surgery. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Jeff. To me, it feels like the Browns don't need, and they're not asking Watson to be a top 5 quarterback anymore. Like, I think that maybe those days are gone. What they need him to be is like the 8th to 14th best quarterback in the league. Make the plays you're supposed to make. Be an athlete when it's time to be an athlete, but don't feel like you have to shoulder the entire offense, because this is an amazing defense. It's a great special teams unit when Dustin Hopkins is healthy. We have a good offensive line. Just go be yourself and we're going to be just fine.
There's a few ways I've been covering this, and your points are all, great. And I think that was the thing, because all of a sudden, and it was a small 48 hours, but the only talk about Deshaun Watson was kind of in a positive light.
Yeah,
that's what happens when you go down to Baltimore and you win. And then, there was some, they were laying back, and it was like, well, go run that 2nd and 18 dig to Amari Cooper, because that ball was humming. Amari Cooper didn't catch it. The ball caught him. And I still say, when the first tweet came from Mary Kay Cabot, because it was just like Deshaun Watson's shoulder out for a year. And it was like, oh man, somebody hacked Mary Kay Cabot's Twitter account. That's what it felt like, because it was just such a blank 5-word sentence. It was like, there's no way she tweeted this. Granted, it got followed up, and then the worst thoughts were. But when you're talking about Deshaun this season, and I don't need Patrick Mahomes numbers and statistics, this, that, the other thing. The two most important statistics for Deshaun Watson and for the Cleveland Browns to be successful are completion percentage and interceptions. Yeah. If completion percentage is high and if interceptions are low, this team should be good enough everywhere else that it is not an issue. And again, you always had to feel the statistical production was going to drop. You're coming to the AFC North. You were playing a lot of games outside. One of his first games as a Brown was on Christmas Eve against the New Orleans Saints. They couldn't give tickets away. The only reason people were near each other, it was too cold, so they were trying to generate body heat. But I do believe if he just plays within himself, takes what is given to him with the skill that he has, the run after catch ability with the guys he has, Nick Chubb will be coming back. It could be October. Maybe, I think personally, is probably going to be a little later than that. But this team also went last year 10-5 without Nick Chubb. So it doesn't mean that it is the be-all, end-all. This team just needs to do what they do and do it well. Granted, new offensive line players, new offensive line coach who hasn't really got a chance to get his mark on this yet, are all issues to watch. But, usually when the names are good, and they've been historically good, you feel it is going to continue. We're going to talk 3 paths to victory for the Cowboys, for the Browns, how it parlays out. As far as predictions, guys, there's still Friday episodes coming, so you're going to have to check that out on Friday. But Crossover Thursday continues, brought to you by PrizePicks. Appreciate you all for being along. When you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place, or you're not looking at all. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Crossover Thursday from the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On Browns, Locked On Cowboys, brought to you by PrizePicks. He is Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. I am Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns. Path to victory. Marcus, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, let's start on offense for the Cowboys. And I think it's going to be a lot of quick passes in this game because the last thing you can do is let Myles Garrett ruin this game. And just a quick aside, the best two edge rushers in the NFL are in this game. I think everybody can appreciate that. We don't have to talk about that.
I did say that 2 episodes ago.
Well, I mean, it's also the truth, right? We don't have to talk about that other guy because these are clearly the best two pass rushers, right? So don't let Myles Garrett ruin the game. I anticipate the Cowboys using a lot of slants, a lot of play action, things to try to keep that pass rush at bay. On defense for the Cowboys, it's going to be about getting pressure on Deshaun Watson without having to send more than 5 guys. And one of the things that Mike Zimmer does really well is come up with, he calls them Zim pressures, right? Where they're showing 6, but only 5 will rush and 1 will drop into coverage. With Deshaun Watson not playing at all in the preseason and missing the final however many games last year, you got to assume that there's going to be some rust, right? Can you take advantage of that? Give him different looks that maybe he's just not used to seeing. I'm going to be really curious to see if the Cowboys can find ways to disrupt the rhythm of the passing attack for the Cleveland Browns. And then one more that I wanted to mention, that it's an outdoor game in week 1. I'm not sure what the status is of Dustin Hopkins, who was one of the best kickers in the NFL last year. Seems like he might be iffy to go. Is that correct still, Jeff?
He did kick 1 field goal in the final preseason game, and it seemed like him not around yesterday, it was more of maybe a travel getting back. I don't think Dustin Hopkins' family is with him in Cleveland. Go ahead.
Okay. It's going to be a big game because I think this is going to be a close contest, right? We're not giving predictions, but I think like 20-17, 23-20, that type of game. Kicking is going to matter in this one. Brandon Aubrey was arguably the best kicker in the NFL last year. He was an all-pro. Didn't kick outdoors a ton, and that makes me a little nervous. But I also want to mention the kicking game in kickoffs, right? This is the first time where we'll be full go for an entire game. Don't boot the ball out of the end zone. Don't kick it out of bounds. Give yourself an opportunity to pin Cleveland back at the 20, 25-yard line. Keep an eye on the kickers in this game because Aubrey and Hopkins are 2 of the best in the NFL. And honestly, whichever one kicks better will probably win this game.
And it's funny when you bring up the special teams aspect. Look, it's as new to us guys as it's going to be to all of you. So there's not really that much more to bring up other than, kickers make your kicks. Kickers don't do silly, stupid things like cost your team 10 to 15 yards.
But that's week 1, right? Like,
of course.
We're going to see probably 3 or 4 games this week decided by either a kicker missing or making a kick. When you have 2 quality opponents or quality teams like the Cowboys and the Browns, both double-digit win teams last year, a lot of times it does come down to who makes that 53-yard field goal and who doesn't.
Yep. And of course, who may give the other one, the opposition, the opportunity because of a poorly placed kickoff. For the Browns, a couple things here. Look, it is going to be this offensive line, Singleton here. And look, we're all excited. We really, really are, but we just don't know. And he's replacing one of the legends in the NFL, certainly in Bill Callahan, but we just have not seen this group collectively together with him. So it is basically, do I think they're going to be good? Sure. But I have to be able to prove that. So I have no proof to prove anything.
Jeff, real quick, I wanted to mention the Cowboys went through this with Bill Callahan. He was their offensive line coach
that's right.
in the mid-2010s. And that first year that he left, the offensive line was still pretty good. Where you saw it start to deteriorate was a couple of years after. I'm sure Cleveland's going to be the same way because nobody's as good as Bill Callahan at coaching offensive linemen. It's just how quickly does the coaching deteriorate? Is it this year? Is it next year? Or is it not at all?
Or do you just go the route of, well, what did Bill do every Tuesday, guys? Just give me
Exactly.
some input here. The other thing is, look, you have a rookie corner starting. You have a corner starting coming off of ACL. You got to attack those guys. You got to see what they got. And the other thing, and to your point where you talked about earlier with the quick passing game is nobody's really played. So a lot of the guys playing haven't tackled anybody in a long time. So that is part of the reason why you're going to go with this, because there's a chance for a lot of chunk plays here in this game, just because, guys, it's been a long time, and a lot of it, you're going to see some ankle and this type of thing, just because it's been a long time since you've got mano-a-mano trying to get a guy to the ground. And that speed, look, there is nothing that comes quicker than the game itself. So, I don't want to hear that, you had the team practices, this, that, and the other thing. When it is live on Sunday in front of everybody, it's a whole new ball game. And then the last one is for, the defense. And like we were trying the other day, and I did a bit on Juan Thornhill, and I think some people thought like I was trying to be critical. No, we were just trying to say one thing on the Browns where I thought maybe they didn't get as much out of it last year as they possibly could this year. There is a lot of potential there. And I am one of these people that truly think the Browns defense should be even better this year, because not much has changed. And now there is no newness. And, now you can probably even add in a little bit more. You have 3 top corners. Jordan Hicks is a really underrated signing to go play with JOK. The guy gets 130 tackles a season. Myles, you think there's going to be a developmental path that, Alex Wright should probably, in my mind, end up being the second best defensive end on this team by the time the year is over. But either way, it is going to be a big one. And this is one of those games where I think, Marcus, and you might agree, you want to get this out of the way week 1. Because it's truly a 50-50 game. So you don't want to play this week 17 or week 18 when you really, really need the W. So, look, you get it out of the way. You know where you're at. The Browns have a relatively easy first 6 weeks of the season. You don't think they're going to go 6-0. You do have the advantage that it is in your place. So it's going to be a big one. I mean, and, you keep in mind, 4 years. I mean, the prime of COVID, Browns, Cowboys, and it was, I think, 49-38. I mean, Browns had a big lead, had no defense. They have a lot better defense now than they did in 2020, of course. But it should be a really, really good ball game. And if you all check the television map, Marcus, myself, and apparently every single red-blooded American is all going to be watching it together.
Yeah, we got Tom Brady on the call. First game that he's ever done broadcasting, which just adds even more excitement to this. I'm really excited because usually in week 1, you don't want to play like a division game or a big conference game. It's nice to play an out-of-conference game where, hey, if you lose, it's not that big of a deal. It's not the end of the world. But these are 2 really good teams. I think we're going to see how these 2 teams stack up and measure against each other early on. This is kind of what you want. Like, you want a really good test out of the gate. And if you win, great. That's a fantastic start. If you lose, again, not a big deal. This is what we need to get to in order to become a playoff team once again.
And, you'll find out a lot about each team through week 1. And, then you go back to the drawing board, and those are things that each team tries to improve on. But, I mean, you got quarterbacks, you got receivers, you got pass rushers, you name it. This game has it. Browns, Cowboys, Sunday, 4:25, crossover Thursday, brought to you by PrizePicks. This is basically crossover Thursday been one of the, the children of the Locked On Podcast Network. And I hope you guys all enjoy it, because look, we all don't get to talk to each other so much. And, as I said, it's been 4 years since there's been a Browns Cowboys crossover. So we all are also busy. We don't have as much time to spend with each other, but you can see that we kind of generally enjoy each other's company. I hope you guys all enjoy it. Look, who we kidding? You're going to enjoy every second, starting Thursday night, Friday night. It is going to be a great weekend. I saw how geeked up you were last weekend, the first weekend of college football. Well, now sprinkle in some NFL to it. To the wives, to the children, we will see you all soon, guys. Everybody loves you. We'll be around for dinner probably Tuesday, Wednesday, and maybe early Thursday. But other than that, we're busy.
You're optimistic there, but go ahead.
Absolutely. I tried to be nice, Marcus. They'll get it by week 2. But he is Marcus Mosher. And him and Landon McCool do a fantastic job. So if you do not have Locked On Cowboys in your rotation right now, correct that. I appreciate you all who make both shows your first listen every single day. Become an everydayer. Subscribe to both shows' YouTube pages. And of course, the shows are always available, and they are always free. Enjoy the game, and make sure you come back on Friday for your final prep on Locked On Browns and Locked On Cowboys.